I'm going to preface all of this by saying that I'm not a Pokemon fan. I watch the anime on occasion, even though I wish I could have watched it more. I didn't get to play the games because I wasn't allowed to play very many games as a child, and since I had bad eyes, handheld games were a big no-no, so I could only play a few that I went back to emulate. That being said, Pokemon was the coolest thing in the world when it came to the US, cooler than Neopets and Goosebumps. It's a game where you build what is essentially a cockfighting ring that you manage in your pocket. If Clifford Geertz were still alive, he would say Pokemon represents man's desire for dominance over nature and man's desire for violence in general, or something like that. Pokemon are monsters that fit in your pocket, also called pocket monsters. And you make a pilgrimage each time to battle all the leaders of the Pokemon gyms to get badges, go to the league, and be the champion. On the way, you run into some group of crazy people with terrible dressing styles, pursuing goals of variable insanity. Some want to rule the world, some want to remake the universe, some want to flood the earth, Old Testament style. It really is the most basic form of JRPG that holds a lot of charm and fun for how simple it is, and plus you can make any team you want. You're in control, and you have over 100 Pokemon each generation to choose from, although there is major balance issues. There are types that have much better Pokemon than other types, like the average Dragon Pokemon is much better than the average Bug Pokemon. And these games often have an issue of making some of your Pokemon into pack slaves to have the skills so that you can actually clear their dungeons. What I remember about these games is that they are extremely grind heavy, like, oh my god. If you want to play the game at a decent rate, you have to emulate it at high speed. So obviously, with something so lucrative, in Japan they made an anime. The anime came to America, and it was one of the few animes that felt very child-oriented, with a very much Saturday morning cartoon setup, and it had a bright palette, especially compared to its other 4 kids dubbed relative, Yu-Gi-Oh!
Mercy is for the weak, like you, my friend!
Before the late 90s and early 2000s, anime was something only hipsters could get into. If it wasn't Vampire Hunter D or Akira, you weren't gonna be able to get it. But then the West was caught by the onslaught of Pokémon and Toonami, mainly Toonami's heavyweight Dragon Ball Z. These two shows brought anime into popularity, at least in the US, but I'd say Pokemon was a lot more successful at that, probably because it was a lot friendlier towards female viewers. I mean, girls don't want to watch a show where extremely stacked men fight and grapple each other for long periods of time while screaming. I mean, most girls. Like most early anime in America, the 4 kids dubbed Pokemon started out really weak.
I choose Magmar!
Our main character is named Ash Ketchum. He's striving to be the greatest Pokemon master ever. Ash doesn't have that many character traits beyond that, you know. He cares about his Pokemon and that's it. Misty is naggy, Brock is horny.
I want to become the world's best breeder.
Team Rocket are quite pathetic, but they're actually pretty good-hearted a lot of the time. Tracy sucks, you know the drill. The first episode is Ash getting his Pikachu from Professor Oak, which makes him pretty doomed for the first gym, and trying to get it to listen to him. Also, Ho-Oh. Pokemon's main appeal has always been the world it created. Ash is not a character, he's a means for the children to put themselves into this world. Character archetypes actually work to the advantage of this series because creating characters is not really needed. It's just a lens to view the world. A world of Poké-Dexter boy geniuses that identify any Pokemon. A world where most people don't have any day jobs that are not related to Pokemon. A world where every town has a Nurse Joy and Officer Jenny who all look the same, all come from the same family, all have the same voice, same personality, and no other career options. It just made myself sad. Plus, every chance they get to develop, Ash never sticks. It always seems to be his Pokemon developing around his static ass. The Pokemon tend to have more personality, but since their dialogue generally consists of them saying their own name over and over, these personalities are still limited. On his journey, Ash tends to meet a lot of people, like Misty, who he meets by stealing her bike. Good job, Ash. Misty nags. I usually identify her as the girl, or later, the girl holding the Togepi. There's also Brock, who I identify as Eastern version of Johnny Bravo, who's not an idiot. As Ash goes to various regions, his party tends to get switched out. Usually there's only one girl in the party at once. These are all characters from the games, with new personalities that are usually bland. Another reason people watched this series was Team Rocket. It's composed of Jesse, James, and a talking Meowth Pokemon. They are recurring villains who are always going to lose, and eventually get so bad that I actually felt more sympathetic for them than I did for our heroes. I don't know if this is a majority opinion. This is not a good show. It's very much something you watch if it's on during Saturday mornings, although apparently that's not a thing anymore. I find the best way to watch them is to find episodes with Pokemon you're attached to, you could use Bulbapedia for that, and watch those episodes. The main reason you wouldn't really want to watch more than one season of Pokemon is that every single one is the same. The main disadvantage is just the show is so stagnant. You could not be a fan for longer than like 2 years most of the time. Ash has to battle gym leaders with the wild Pokemon he caught, and he goes to the league. That's it. Rinse and repeat. So the anime doesn't really have that much to offer. I'm not saying there weren't emotional moments like those that whole Butterfree flying away or Jesse and James released their Weezing and Arbok. but the plot never really changes. The stagnation stops me from really liking it. I haven't met even hardcore fans who watch every episode of these multiple animes. I don't think anyone can stand so little change in their show. But for kids, there's nothing here remotely threatening, and they'll enjoy it. Well, unless they have epilepsy or something. The first series ended after the Johto League, but more of them have been produced and are being produced to this day because of a 5-letter word that starts with M. Macau, the Chinese city. It's a big market for Pokemon. Each region series is adapting the games that they're based on, except you're not experiencing it, some kid you don't care about is. And it's only good for as long as you can project onto the kid. My favorite part of the localization was the music they wrote for it, like the theme song, the Kanto Poke Rap, Team Rocket's Double Trouble, Viridian City, so many pieces. It's something that 4Kids like to do to get this series hammered into our heads with extreme musical catchiness that will never leave us. It's like a shock of Electro, Diglett, Nidoran, Mankey, Venusaur, Data, Fearow, Pidgey, That's my review of the anime. There's not anything I can add. The movies in general are not very good, especially after the 4th one. The formula is almost always that Ash meets a legendary Pokemon. You'd think he'd write a book about this when he grows up, seeing how legendary means nothing now. Oh, movie was that 5-letter word that started with M. Or was it money? I was one of those kids who was way more attached to the trading card game. For one, Ash never caught and trained the Pokemon I liked, like Ammonite, or Scizor, or Flygon. Look at Ammonite, that cute bastard. That thing is way cuter than a Pikachu, and had this skill called Clairvoyance where you can see all your opponent's hand cards. So it's cute and psychic. The trading card game was even more flexible in the game because you didn't even need to pick a starter. All you have to do is spend a bunch of real money on booster packs. Suckers. Also, a bunch of people had these cards but never played with them because they were not really geek enough and just wanted to pretend to be geeks by trying to like Pokemon. You people are fakers, or more likely you had no one to play with and there was no way to ask, do you play the Pokemon trading card game without sounding really lame and being ostracized by everyone you knew and loved for eons, and you were probably imagining yourself hanging out with friends in 40 years and they'll still bust your balls or ovaries about that. If you were going to do anything with your Pokemon, you usually had to attach energy cards to them, and all chance effects were determined by coin flips. The object of the game is to make sure your opponent has no Pokemon left, or to draw your 6 prize cards. You draw 1 prize card when you knock out an enemy Pokemon. You draw 2 if you defeat a super powerful version of a Pokemon called EX. It's a fun reason to bug your mother to give you money so you can destroy your friends at a game, as long as you're not buying a Charizard, which always end up overpriced because of the law of supply and demand. Like, why does everyone want a Charizard in their deck? Pretty much all the Charizard cards when I was playing were really bad. Surprisingly, this game at low levels took more strategy than Yu-Gi-Oh!, which is funny because that card game looks so hardcore and this card game doesn't. Speaking of which, I think Pokemon could have interestingly constructed a series where they did nothing but play trading cards. Oh my god, that's an anime series about card games. This game would have been more balanced without weaknesses and resistances, mainly because there was no Pokemon that's resistant to fire, and that's bollocks, and I hate Zapdos. And then around the time the Diamond and Pearl sets came out, they made it so that legendaries were strong as fully evolved Pokemon, which I know it's like that in the game, but that was needed for balance because obviously you don't have to evolve legendaries, so now there's no reason not to build a deck full of legendaries. In other words, they destroyed the balance of their stupid tie-in trading card game to try to get people to spend more money collecting legendary cards. That's disgusting. This is where the game broke, and it will never be fixed. Never. Actually, while I'm on the subject, can someone explain to me why the Pokemon setup is so legendary-centric? All these new generations have insane numbers of legendary Pokemon, starting from Gen 3. People must really like the subquest of going to defeat and spend an incredible amount of effort to collect overpowered creatures. There are no opponents in the game where you will need legendaries to defeat, and very few opponents that would use a legendary Pokemon on you. So I don't get why in gameplay they would be introduced if there's no big boss. You fight with legendaries that you can't fight with just your normal Pokemon. I can see the appeal of like defeating one, but not like of capturing and enslaving into your will. Like once you get a legendary, what's next, you know? And you can capture like 15 legendaries in a region. Like Pokemon Red and Blue and their remakes didn't need a legendary to be the mascot. It was just evolved starters. It was just a taste of what you want to receive, a stronger Pokemon. Legendaries were a secret to be found and discovered as you played. Actually, this reminds me of all the promotional material to Star Wars Revenge of the Sith. Basically, during this time, Darth Vader is in his iconic outfit all over the promotional materials, the posters, the trailer, even cereals. However, if you watch that film, Darth Vader is only in that outfit for the last 5 minutes of the movie. Can you imagine if on the cover of, say, the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, you saw the appearance of the scary, looming, live-action Cyclops? Sure, it's the main threat and the villain that our heroes have to face, but it's not who we see for the majority of the story, and everything in the movie is built up to seeing that thing. Alright, enough on this prodding. I guess people are just way too drawn to the preview of a hunt. A hunt where you throw 40 Ultra Balls and hope to catch the creature. Pokemon is not just a game, or collectible cards, or a set of anime series and movies. It's a culture at this point. Why wouldn't it be? So many monsters that can be raised and trained, and you can be a fan of any of them. I haven't met a single fan of Tauros, but I'm sure they're out there. Pokemon has this wonderful sort of universal appeal with how innocent it is. Well, besides the violence. You know what? Including the violence, people love the cartoonish fun and the fact that even though you follow the same plot every time, it felt like it was your story when you play it.
This is my story.
No! That really is the genius of Pokemon, how it manages to appeal to as many people as possible. I guess that leads to one question. Was that intentional? Did the guys at Nintendo say, we're gonna make the most commercially successful cultural thing for decades that people will not only love superficially but also fundamentally? Like Sega tried to do with Sonic the Hedgehog. From its base design, it was cute. All the starters are cute. All the early Pokemon you encounter, except Spearow for some reason, are cute. Then they bring a cool factor. As Pokemon evolve, they turn from cute to cool. A Trico becomes a Grovyle. A Chimchar turns into an Infernape. A Dratini turns into a... Alright, that one doesn't work. So yes, I do think there was a level of master marketing to assemble Pokemon the way it was. This story is yours. This world is yours. And you can build your team and you can battle your friends. All this choice wasn't common back in '96, I'm sure. And all this choice was even less common on a handheld game. You could be anywhere and you could access your Pokemon. It's like every step was designed to sell. And everyone bought it. Hook, line, and sinker. But no one's complaining. Not like the Sonic fans. I guess I can quickly talk about those Pokemon movies. Why is every film about meeting a legendary? Why can't we just have a movie where Ash defeats a devil worshipper with 6 powerful Pokemon? Like, I don't know, an Aggron. Someone, anyone, help me on the subject. I don't understand how 4Kids thinks they can dub lines like this.
That's disgusting! The way you talk, it's like Pokemon are just things to collect, like dolls or stamps! What kind of trainer are you?
And this?
Pokemon aren't meant to fight. Not like this. It's useless. What can come out of it?
Nothing but pain.
And have such simple plots go wrong. These movies are like so cheap and like soulless and mass produced. It's actually amazing. I'm gonna go into... Alright, I don't have time to go into this. Some other time then.